and thank you very much for joining our webinar today. My name is Tapiwa Bepe. I'm from the Victoria Falls Stock Exchange, and I'm going to be your moderator for today. Today, we're going to be having a line of speakers that are going to take us through what the Victoria Falls Stock Exchange is, as well as their role as part of the participants for the stock exchange. Allow me to introduce our first speaker today, who is Kudakwashe Mundowozi. He's currently the head of the ZSE markets with a strong understanding of the financial markets. He's got over 13 years of experience in the financial services industry, which covers investment analysis, corporate affairs, and equities administration. We are going to be having a question and answer section at the end of his presentation, but if you feel that you need to interject as he's going through the presentation, feel free to raise your hand, or you can also just type in your questions through in the chat. I have disabled the video so that we will not be able to be disrupted during the presentation. Allow me to invite Kuda to the virtual podium to take us through what the Victoria Falls Stock Exchange is, as well as the investment options on VFEX. Kuda, over to you.
Thank you, Tapiwa. Good morning, everyone. I think that was a mouthful from Tapiwa. She gives me more credit than I deserve. I will just share my presentation with you, then I will take you through the presentation. Just bear with me as I put my screen up. Just give me a second. Okay. Please confirm you can see my screen.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, so my presentation really will base around what is VFX. We'll look at the legislation that was put in place governing the Victoria Falls Stock Exchange. We'll see the options that are there on the Victoria Falls Exchange, and we'll also see how to invest and the investment opportunities that are there. I'm also going to touch on how you can invest through our retail platform that we've created specifically for the retail clients. So really, the VFX, as it's popularly known, is the Victoria Falls Exchange, which was founded in 2020. Now, this is a wholly owned subsidiary of the ZSC, and we are a for-profit making organization. On the exchange, we offer different types of products. You can trade shares there, depository receipts, you can do fixed incomes, exchange traded funds, exchange traded notes, and real estate investment trusts, REITs. In terms of what's available now on the exchange, we have shares that are already listed there. We have a depository receipt that's already listed there, and people have raised money through fixed income instruments on the exchange, and they all have been very successful in the trading. Have you seen, obviously, probably had a slow start on the exchange, but going into this year, it's picked up significantly, where we are averaging at least turnover around $2 million per month. Now, the legislation governing is actually an act of parliament, where it was through an SI that it was done. It's also registered under the Securities and Exchange Act 24, Chapter 25. And the SI that put it into existence is SI 100 of 2020, which governs the rules of the exchange. There's also an exchange control directive on the Victoria Falls Exchange, which is RV 177 of 2020. And really what this does is it allows people to transact, and when you sell your shares, you don't have to remit or surrender requirements. You're not subject to surrender requirements. So you keep 100% of your foreign currency when you transact on the Victoria Falls Exchange. There's also Finance Act 23 or 04 that provides incentives on the exchange, such as the exemption of capital gains tax. The trading fees on the exchange is actually quite lower than that on the ZSC, which I'll go down later, and I'll just give you a breakdown of all the fee structure when you're trading on the VFEX. It's also important to note that the Victoria Falls Exchange was declared to be in a special economic zone, which was when Victoria Falls was declared a special economic zone in SI 4 of 2022. In terms of the, I've already said, in terms of the directive on the surrender requirements, you will be able to retain all your money. In terms of disinvestments, dividends as well, you will be able to retain all your US dollars. Now, it's important to note that on the VFX, if you are a foreigner and you raise money there on as a foreigner, it also means that you will be able to get your money outside the country. So there's very limited exchange control restrictions on the VFEX. In fact, we were granted a blanket exchange control approval. When someone raises money, the money can go offshore. When someone sells, disinvest, the money can go offshore. If you trade and you are invested there and you get your dividends, the money can also go offshore. So it's very friendly for people who are non-resident in Zimbabwe. And for those who are resident as well, I think it's quite friendly in the fact that you're able to retain your US dollar, which you can't with other accounts. In terms of capital raising options on the VFX, I mean, there are quite a number that are there. You've got your IPO, which you can do, or you can list by introduction, and you want to raise money later on, or you can do a private placement. Still, you can raise money on there. In terms of if you want to do an initial public offering, this is just an outline of what you need, the documentation that needs to be there. So really, you need the prospectus, you need documents of the application, you need a general letter of undertaking from the board, board resolution from the company that wishes to list or raise money there, and all these have to be an original signed accountant report. Is quite essential. And you need an underwriting agreement, as well as other details for the planned exercise. Once we have all this, they are submitted to the exchange, the listing committee sits, and then if it approves this, then the process of raising the money starts. In terms of the other way, if you're doing by introduction, you still have to do your formal application as a first schedule. You release your pre-listing statement for the people around to know what you want to list, what your main line of business is, so that people, when they buy the shares, they know exactly what they're getting into, as well as the other documents that are needed, more or less on like the ones I've just mentioned before, will be also needed on this. I think also another thing that's needed is your copies of expert consents. So you want consent letters of people who will be working with the company on the transactions. And in terms of private placement, again, you need to make your formal application, and the documents are quite similar. I won't go through each and every one of them, but they're quite similar in all of the listings. I think the most important thing is to start a conversation with the exchange, have a financial advisor appointed, a sponsor appointed as well, who will be the liaison between the exchange and the company, and then you can start your process and they'll be guiding you accordingly. In terms of debt issuance, companies can raise, like I said before, that they can raise hard currency because the VFX is denoted in a hard currency. So they can issue just securities such as bonds. We have a bond listed there. You know, you're familiar with the CARO, the bond that was there. It raised quite a bit of money, and it was quite a success when it did. And the requirements of debt listing are not very onerous. The issuer just comply, duly authorized to issue debt in terms of the memorandum and articles of association of the company, and have the intention to list its debt securities within a minimum tenure of 1 year with at least $1 million US. Now, how do you participate on the VFX really, which is for the issuers? So if you're listed already on the ZSE, you can either a local firm or you're a foreign firm. If you're a local firm, you can list up to 20% of your capital, or you can actually delist completely from the ZSE and you can list on the VFX. You might have heard of the migrations that have been going on, and then when you delist, you list the new securities, or which is by way of introduction. or if you can then list your capital, you can have a new security on the VFEX. If it's a foreign firm, again, if it's listed on the ZSE, it can delist on the ZSE, and then it can then go on the VFX, but it has to reinvest 20% of the money it raises within 5 years, and that's being invested in any part of the economy in Zimbabwe, though. Or it can list also any percentage it wants on the VFX, and it has to reinvest 20% of the raised capital within 5 years. For those not already listed on the ZSE, whether local or foreign, they both can list 100% on the VFX. If it's a local firm, it can be an IPO or by introduction. But if it's a foreign firm and it wasn't listed anyway, it's listed 100%. There is no need for it to list to reinvest 20% of the capital raised, because it's a new listing and it's already in the country. So how do you invest on the VFX? These are just the steps that were there. If you want to invest as a retail, the first port of call is you contact your broker, where you provide your KYC and your account opening form. Then there's an opening of an FCA account, which is an investment account. And then we open what we call a securities custodial account, or ETS account. And then you start your trading account. So all of this, you just provide your KYC to one who is only your broker, and then they open the other 3 accounts for you. You don't have to open each account by yourself. Your broker or your agent will do this for you. In terms of participation, it's just a snapshot of how you participate. Let me just hide this so that you can see. So really from start, if you see, you do your client registration on the platform, the VFX Direct platform. I'll talk to it after this. Let me just keep it for now, and I'll come back to it. On the mobile apps, I'll come back to it. Then what are the investing opportunities on the VFX? Like I said, it's investing in existing companies on the ZSE. That's you can, at the moment, we have 13 companies that are already listed on the VFX. We have our very first ETF is in the pipeline. It should be listed in the second half of 2023. We also are expecting another listing I think this one will be in the second half again of 2023, where we have another company. So that number is going to go up to 14, and we hope it will keep going up. And we also are looking at debt instruments that will come in, and we're also looking at some risks that will come in again this year. So all of this we're expecting to be coming in the second half of 2022. But other things we're looking at, we're also looking at launching a commodity exchange, which we're very excited about. This should be coming in again in the second half of 2023. So work on it has already been done. We're just finalizing that, and we should be seeing it coming through to the market before the close of this calendar year. I think what are the benefits of VFX to investors? So these are really the benefits that we can say we have. Trading and clearing can be on or offshore in US dollars. There's no capital gains on disposal of your securities, so you don't have to pay tax on that. There's a lower withholding tax on dividends for foreigners. So if you're outside Zimbabwe and you're registered as a foreigner, you only pay 5%, as opposed to if for locals who pay 10%. There are also lower transaction costs there. I'll give you a snippet of the transaction costs. And also, I think there is reduced, very minimal currency risk because you'll be trading in the US dollars. So I think now I had mentioned before about VFX Direct. So really, VFX Direct is an online platform that was introduced last year in September. The platform is specifically designed for investors to encourage retail participation on the Victoria Falls Stock Exchange. It provides retailers with an easy and convenient way to buy and sell securities on the exchange. And it can be accessed via a web portal and also via mobile applications. On mobile applications, you can use Android or you can use iOS. Some of the key features that we have on this is that it is user-friendly. You can actually see, as you can see on my screen there, this is just a snippet of what it looks like, where you can see your portfolio, what you're holding, you can see the percentage change, what it has brought. You can also, so you can monitor your investment from this, but also you can see the statistics of the market, including a snapshot of what's going on. You can see the price sheet to help you track your performance of your portfolio, and also to help you make informed decisions. So it's a window where you can use to look at your portfolio, you can use to track your investment. It's a window you can use to make informed decisions, and it's all through this VFX Direct app. So how do you get started on VFX? And it's easy. I mean, the first thing is obviously you have to be of age, so you have to be above 18 years of age. We need a valid ID if you are Zimbabwean, or a passport if you're a foreigner. Will suffice. We need proof of residence that clearly states the registered name as it appears on your ID or your passport, and the address. This can be a utility bill, a bank statement. The bank statement has to be at least 3 months old and stamped by the bank. We need, or it can be an affidavit by your landlord, or a lease agreement, or letter from your employer. Or if you're in the rural areas, we do not discriminate. You can give us a letter from your councillor or your village head. We also agree to that. So we also need, you'd need a valid email address for registration. You'd also need a phone number for us to get in contact with you. And most importantly, you need a Nostro bank account. This can be with any commercial bank in Zimbabwe, but you can also now, we've also expanded this. So if you're not in Zimbabwe, you can give us your bank, it gets vetted, and then we can add it on the platform, and you can trade using your own account number. We just need your details for the bank that you use. So how to register is really a few steps. So if you want to register, you go on our web portal, www.vfxdirect.vfx.exchange. You click on the register tab. So one, you select your broker. There'll be a list of brokers. The drop-down menu will come. Currently, there was just a few who are there, but more and more keep being registered on the platform. So you choose the broker of your choice there. Step 2, it will prompt you to enter your personal details, create a password, and then you click submit. A verification email will be sent to your registered email address, which you then have to go and check. I always urge people that when you're looking for this email, sometimes it goes to your spam, so you might as well want to look at there and see if the verification email has come. Once you verified your account, you thereafter proceed to log in. Once logged in, you proceed to complete the registration process. It will be prompting you step by step, and then would want you to add your banking details. And these have to be very correct, because these are the banking details which will be used when you disinvest. These are the banking details will be used when a dividend is paid out to you. So you need to make sure that the correct banking details which you have access to. Third-party payments are not allowed on the platform. So you need to be banking details in your own name. We would want you to also upload a picture with your proof of residence, a picture of yourself, and it has to be in PDF format. So once you do this, you click submit. Your application will be processed within 48 hours. This is excluding weekends, obviously. So it's 2 working days. We need to process your application, and you'll be notified via email of the allocation of a securities account, which is your EDS number, which is your specific account which you'll be using in order to trade. After EDS number is allocated, you can then proceed to top up your wallet in US dollars. When you send your funds, it's not instant like it is on ZSE Direct. It takes up to 72 hours, again excluding weekends, to reflect in your account. But we always urge people that when you do make your deposit, please send a POP, proof of payment, to our VFX Direct helpline, and they will be able to just help you track that. And within 72 hours, you'll have your money in your trading account, and you can start using it. Our trading hours on VFX Direct are the same as on the main platform, where it opens at 9:30 and closes at 1 p.m. In terms of funding your wallet, really, we've tried to make it as user-friendly as possible. We've tried to make it as efficient as possible. So To top up your wallet, you log into your VFX Direct account, click on My Wallet tab on the dashboard. As you see there on my screen, it will be showing you where you want to deposit or withdraw, or it can show you your account statement. It shows you what you've done, your activity really. So you click on the tab, top up wallet tab, you enter amount, you click initiate deposit. The VFX Direct banking details will appear on your screen after you do this. Once the banking details appear on your screen, proceed to your banking portal, initiate a transfer or deposit funds at the VFX Direct CBZ Nostro account, because we bank with CBZ, and then we are on your way to start your trading using the funds that you've deposited. In terms of buying and selling, it's quite easy. I'll just sprint through this. So placing an order is quite easy. You just select the counter you want to buy, specify the number of shares you want to buy. Volume can be from 1 to infinity. So VFX, unlike ZSE, where you have two boards, you have a regular board and the odd lot board. On the VFX, you have one board where you can place an order to buy from 1 share to infinity. The price per share or the price you're prepared to pay, then it should be within the range. If you look right on top of the bid price there, tab just behind the second tab, you see where it says range. That is the range which shows you the lowest and the highest you can bid or you can offer for a share. When bid, I say buy, offer, I mean sell. So that is the range you can put your price within. And this is within the prevailing range, and this is within our circuit breakers. And the circuit breaker on the VFX is pegged at 20% of the maximum it can move per day, up or down is 20%. If you put in a price which is outside the range, the platform will alert you that your price is outside the range and will give you guidance on where the range should be. Now, when you place your buy order, there's also what you call the time in force. Time in force is automatically placed at a day order, but you can change it if you want to put it as a GTC, good till cancelled, or you want to put it for a specific time, maybe for 2 days or 3 days. We have the option to do that. So you check if you feel the order fills accordingly on your preference, and then click on the place order and you can confirm your order. If the order matches, you will receive a matched order confirmation. In order, if order is not matched, you will need to re-input it the next day, because if it's a day order, it expires at the end of the trading session. All of the trades on the VFX follow a T+3. When I say T+3 settlement cycle, I mean that from the trade of date, which is today, it takes 3 days to settle. So if you buy today, they'll only appear on your account on the 4th day, because on the 3rd day, this is when they settle. And then on the 4th day, they'll be appearing. If it's a sell, it means your money is likely to reflect in your account on the 4th day, because the first 3 days are for the settlement cycle. I think we've really covered what you want to know about buying. And in terms of selling, it's quite a similar process where you place your sell counter. You simply need to specify the counter you want to sell, just like you did when you're buying, the quantity you want to sell, just like you did when you're buying, and also the price. And with the price, there's also that range that I said, and the range will tell you if you're putting within range, which is 20% up or down of the prevailing price or the opening price of the day. You can also make use of the market depth so that you can see where other sellers are selling, you can see where other bids are, so you can make an informed decision before you actually sell your shares. So buying and selling of shares on ZSE Direct is, if order matches, you get your confirmation, just like you did on buying. Is again a T+3 cycle model, which means if you sell today, like I said before, you get your money on the 4th day, and all proceeds are transferred into your FCA Nostro account, which will not be subject to any surrender requirements. If you are transacting from offshore, the funds will be transferred to your offshore account. And again, you will not be subject to any surrender requirements. So you can only sell shares when you're selling that are appearing under your portfolio. You cannot sell shares that have not settled or that are not yet appearing in your portfolio. In terms of transaction costs, remember I said that they are less than the ZSE, and these are the trading fees that you're looking at. On the ZSE, the Dealer commission is 0.92%, whereas here is 0.6%. VAT is significant, is the same as 4.5% of the brokerage, and then the CSG levy is the same, 0.04%. Stamp duty is the same again. I think VFX levy is significantly less than that on ZSE. The SEC levy is probably the same. Vector protection levy is the same. But you will notice that there is no capital gains tax. You will not be taxed on capital gains if you trade on the VFX. So really, again, this again on the depository, you will see that on the depository receipts, the fee charge are different. The dealer commission now goes up a bit. Then it actually goes way down to 0.1%. The rest are almost the same. But again, you'll notice that there is no capital gains tax. I think these are just our contact details, but by and large, this is what the VFX has to offer in the VFX Direct. I think I can take any questions now, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Kuda, for a thorough presentation. I think for the questions, let me start with the ones that are in the chat. Then I'll also allow one or two delegates to ask and unmute. So the first question was, do you share the market data if there are other groups looking to build alternative trading platforms?
Okay, thank you, Tab. So we do share market data, but our market data is not really free. You can subscribe to our market data if you want to get market data. But if you remember when I was going through the ZSE, the VFX Direct presentation, you saw that you have access to a lot of market data through that portal. You'll be able to see what's going on, but we do share market data.
Thanks, Kuda. The second question was from Tatenda. I was asking whether it is possible for one to migrate from C-Trade to VFX Direct.
So C-Trade and VFX Direct are different. They're actually different companies. So it's not possible to migrate from C-Trade to VFX Direct. You would need to open a new account and then start buying on VFX Direct. You need to liquidate on C-Trade and then start building again on VFX Direct.
Thanks, Kuda. And then Batsi was saying, thank you very much for expanding the Nostra accounts to include those which are not registered in Zimbabwe. So this is a request that may you also please vet and add the UK-based Nationwide Building Society to your list of approved banks or building societies.
So yes, we can add. All you need to do is when you're ready to transact, you send us an email when you're opening your account, you give us your banking details, and then we can add your bank onto the platform. So that's just as per request, because we don't have a database of all the banks that are there.
Thanks, Kuda. I think this one is mainly directed to me, where people are asking to share the recording and the presentation. And this will definitely be done after the meeting. We'll share the recording once we've compressed it. And then we'll also share the presentation from all the speakers. I will allow one or two delegates who have burning questions for Kuda to maybe raise your hand, you unmute, and then you ask your question directly to Kuda. Going once, going twice. I see, Kuda, you did a good job. I think all the questions have been asked. If you still have any other questions, burning questions, I think you can still use the chat to ask your question, and then Kuda will be able to respond. But allow me to introduce to you our next speaker for today. We've got a lady in the house. Her name is Simbiso Musa, who is the head of custodial services at CBZ Bank. And she's largely responsible for the growth strategy of that unit. She's got over 13 years experience in capital markets, with also extensive knowledge in financial analysis, corporate restructuring, and financial modeling. She has in the past worked for Invictus Securities, National Social Security Authority, NASA, and National Building Society, NBS. She also holds a master's in business administration and a BCom in finance from the National University of Science and Technology. Simba, so welcome and thank you very much for agreeing to be part of the panelist. I am going to share a presentation from my end and I will allow you to unmute so that you can proceed.
Thank you, Tapiwa, and morning, everyone. Okay, as alluded to by Tapiwa, I represent CBZ Bank, the custodial services side, and I'll just proceed to outline the role of the custodian in the process that Kuda was presenting on. Custodian banks are licensed by SEC, and they.
Sorry to interject, Sibis, can you confirm if the slides are moving? I just want to just test one or two.
It hasn't moved yet.
Okay.
So to slide number 2.
Okay, that's fine. That's what I wanted to confirm. Okay.
Okay. All right. So I'll proceed. Custodian banks are licensed by SEC and provide different services to VFEX participants. So I'll try and go into detail with respect to the critical responsibilities we have for VFEX participants. So the first one would be CSD account opening and maintenance, bank account opening and maintenance, dematerialization of securities, trade affirmation, settlement and reporting. So I'll go into the first one, which is FCA account opening and maintenance. So for you to be able to trade on the VFX, you need an FCA account. And as custodian banks, we're responsible for that. As Kuda alluded to, you can submit your KYC documents through the broker. You can also submit your KYC documents through any of our branches or any bank branch. It still works. So the same KYC documents you provide to a broker are the same KYC documents that we also need for accounts opening. So the FCA account is used for funding purchases, trades, and receiving your sell proceeds after you exit or after you sell, as well as receiving your dividends. For foreign clients, the bank is also responsible for remittance of funds offshore. And I think I would also want to just take a minute there to confirm that we have been remitting funds smoothly. We haven't had any challenges. Only to note that the process of remitting offshore funds is different from that of local funds. So if a trader or if an investor wishes to have their proceeds remitted offshore, they would need to advise their broker on T+0 on the day that they trade, so that they also advise the custodian, such that we initiate the process. You'd understand that if we're remitting offshore, we have to seek exchange control approval. So if that is done on the T+3, you might then receive your funds maybe a bit later. But if you advise the custodian on T+0, you are on course to receive your process on T+3. But overall, the bank accounts are maintained by the bank and are subject to normal bank charges, such as monthly maintenance fees. We move on to the second role, which is securities account opening and maintenance. When you submit your KYC to the broker, they can on forward those documents to us for facilitation of opening of CSD accounts. A CSD account is like your holdings account or your scrip account. That's where, when you buy your shares, that's where they reflect in. So they are used for effecting all securities transactions, that is transfers and corporate actions and trades. In this day and age as well, we've got people using their shares as collateral. You then need to pledge them as collateral through a custodian. And if you go that route, your shares will reflect in the CSD account that they've been blocked. They are not available for trade up until you relinquish the facility that you would have accessed at the bank. The account opening and maintenance is done after submission of the KYC documents. I've talked about that. So we go on to the third row, which is dematerialization of shares. We are aware that the dematerialization process is not yet 100%. We still have clients holding on to physical share certificates. We are responsible for processing or facilitating the conversion of the physical share certificates into electronic form such that they are tradable. Investors need to submit the physical certificate with us or to their broker, who then proceed to submit them to us, and a completed form for onward processing by the custodian. And typically, the dematerialization process and account opening takes 24 to 72 hours. Account opening is a day's job, 24 hours. The dematerialization process can spread to 3 days because there are also other departments which are involved, particularly the transfer secretary and the depository. But the process is initiated from our end. I'll go on to the fourth row, which is trade affirmation. Affirmation of trades simply involves checking trade funding and accuracy of deal notes against the settlement reports. We usually do that on T+1 and T+2, such that to make sure that settlement on T+3 goes on smoothly. When we get a report of all the trades that would have taken place for our clients, we then proceed to check whether, if you were buying, whether your account is funded for a debit for debiting that amount on T+3. And then if you are selling, we check whether the deal note is corresponding, as well as whether everything else, whether you also actually hold the shares that you sold, so that there is no glitch on the settlement day on T+3. The next is trade settlement. So after we do our affirmations on T+3, we are responsible for moving the funds. So the buyers get debited and the monies are extended to the ones who sold. So we pretty much pay out sale process to clients, and on the VFX process can be paid out locally, like I alluded to, regional and internationally, and there are no surrender requirements for VFX process. I think Kuda talked about that as well. The custodian recovers funding from clients' accounts in respect of the purchase trade, and for designated brokers, the custodian processes the net settlement position of brokers' daily trades, with the broker processing the individual client trades. So these processes are pretty much similar for both individuals and corporates, as well as institutions. So it's pretty much the same process across. And then I think lastly, we provide reporting services. That means that if you need your CSD investor holding reports, you just email us or you advise your broker, who can contact us, and we can provide that within a space of an hour or two. And then provision of bank statements at any time. You can request for your bank statements. And then for any other ad hoc reports, you can request them through email or all the other platforms that we have available, so that we can provide them to you. I think lastly, these are contact details for accounts opening, CSD accounts opening. You can contact us anytime, and we can facilitate and onboard you onto the VFX. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Simbiso, for that presentation, which was precise. Let me just check if there are any questions in the chat box. I see none. I'll also give a chance to anyone who would want to raise their hand to ask Simbiso directly any questions that you might want. Okay, I see that, Stephen, you've raised your hand. Kindly unmute, and you can go ahead and ask your question.
So, sorry, I think you spoke about the account fees. Can we get an idea in terms of, because you're talking about maintenance, account maintenance fees? What sort of figures are we talking about, or percentages are we talking about?
Okay, thank you, Stephen. At the moment, your FCA account, which will be linked to VFEX, is termed an investment account, and it incurs $2.50 per month in monthly fees.
So $2 US.
$2.50 per month, yeah.
Okay, all right, thanks.
But maybe I would also add that if you then, if there are also transfer charges which may apply. For example, you want to transfer your money or we are remitting to you, there's a transfer charge which applies there, which is a normal banking charge, transaction charge outside of custodial services.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. I'll also give the floor to Takunda, who has raised their hand, so that you can just go ahead and unmute and ask your question.
Hello, my question is to do with the sale proceeds when dealing with banks. For starters, let's say locally. So are there any restrictions when it comes to the funds that you can actually withdraw? Like I heard that maybe if you get a transfer, you're not going to be able to withdraw those funds. So funds that come from sale proceeds from VFX, am I able to withdraw them and get cash, or there are restrictions there?
Thank you, Takunda. Indeed, you're able to withdraw the funds that that credit your account as a result of VFX proceeds. The restrictions that normally apply are the daily withdrawal limits for individuals across banks. So you'd see that the daily withdrawal limits, they range from 5,000 to 10,000 across banks. So those are the restrictions that apply. But in the event that you have proceeds less than 5,000, yes, you are able to withdraw them at once. But if they exceed, you might need maybe two, three trips or more to the bank to withdraw the entire amount.
I'm answered, thanks.
Thank you very much. Since I don't think there are any further questions, if people still have burning questions, you can just go ahead and also type in the chat box. But thank you very much. We will now move on to our last speaker for the day, who is Itai Chirume. He is currently the Executive Director at MMC Capital. He's got a keen interest in corporate performance and corporate governance analysis, and has also been a chief adjudicator in various surveys of listed company performance here in Zimbabwe. Thank you very much, Itai, for joining us. I will give the virtual podium to you so that you can go ahead and conduct your presentation. Over to you, Itai.
Thanks very much, Tapio. Let me try and share my presentation. Just confirm for me if you can now see. Can you now see is it visible?
Not yet.
Okay, so I'm not sure why I'm having difficulty sharing it. May you maybe kindly share it from your end, Tapio.
Okay, that's fine. As I'm sharing, I've just seen a question. I'll hand this one over to you, Kuda, from Tichaona. He's saying, what's the current market cap? Sure, he's saying for VFX. If you can just kindly check for us.
So the current market cap for VFX is about 1.5 billion. So 1.5 billion US dollars. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Kuda, for that. Itai, is the presentation now visible? If so, you can go ahead.
Okay, yeah, sure. Maybe if you could put it into slideshow format, Tapio, thanks a lot.
Let me do that. Is it visible?
It is, although it's still not in
slideshow. I think I'm
slides.
having challenges with the slideshow. Let me just retry again.
Okay, but anyway, I'm going to take you through the role of stockbrokers in the capital markets, and for me to do that, I will first of all look at present the structure of our financial markets in Zimbabwe. For purposes of showing that there are two main markets where a broker is involved, namely the primary markets and the secondary markets. So I'll speak to what a broker does in those two markets, and I'll conclude by looking at the mechanisms of investor protection and the regulation that is around those mechanisms. So maybe looking at the structure of the financial markets in Zimbabwe, I think our market is pretty much segmented into money markets and capital markets, and the money markets comprise mainly of your commercial banks, which are regulated by the central bank, the RBZ, and the DPC, the Deposit Protection Corporation. And typically the instruments that are traded in that market are fixed income, fixed tenure securities, typically with 360 days or less, 30, 60, 90, 180, and 360-day paper. So that's a plain vanilla market. Then you've got the capital markets where our stock exchanges reside. And this is where long-term capital is raised. We do have principally three markets in that space: the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange, the Victoria Falls Stock Exchange, and the Financial Securities Exchange, FinSec. And these are regulated by the capital markets regulator, which is the Securities and Exchange Commission of Zimbabwe. Other intermediaries other than brokers who are players in that market are your asset managers, custodians, financial advisors, transfer secretaries, and the depositories. We've got Chengetedzai Depository, we've got the ZSC Depository, and we've got the VFEX Depository, all of whom are regulated by the Securities and Exchange Commission of Zimbabwe. Looking at the just to give you context as to a little bit of history about our markets. The ZSC is the oldest market, having been established way back in 1946 as a mutual society, and it was demutualized in 2015. In other words, it became a company which is with shareholders rather than a mutual society with members. It was initially a self-regulated organization and regulated in terms of an act, a ZSC Act, which was repealed in 2008 when the Securities Act came into play. We then had, in 2016, the establishment of the Financial Securities Exchange, which came through as an alternative trading platform. And then 4 years later, the Victoria Falls Stock Exchange was born in a special economic zone in Victoria Falls, which in 2022 through SI4 of 2022 was converted into an overseas financial services center. Both the ZSE, VFEX, and FinSec are licensed and regulated by this Securities and Exchange Commission in terms of the Securities Act and regulations under SI 100 of 2010. All these exchanges typically have at least 2 listing boards which incorporate the equities and fixed income instruments. But more and more we are seeing new instruments coming through. I think you did notice that Kuda spoke about REITs, exchange traded funds, etc. So that could usher in more boards going forward. The ZSE, I'm not sure from the market cap statistics that Kuda has just presented whether the ZSE is still the largest by market cap, because the VFX has been coming up quite aggressively. But definitely in terms of trading, activity of trading, we're still seeing more trades on the ZSE and less on the VFX. But we have noticed that volumes seem to be, picking up quite rapidly on the VFX. And typically all those exchanges regulate their issuers in terms of their own listing rules. Right. With that context, I will now, proceed to talk about what brokers do in the capital markets. Right. So our capital markets is segmented into the primary markets and secondary markets. The primary markets are where capital is raised, right, in the capital markets, and examples of transactions on the primary market, typically your IPOs, rights issues, right? And these transactions are typically highly regulated for purposes of providing high levels of investor protection. And this is achieved through the listing rules themselves. In other words, the VFX listing rules will have requirements which are designed to achieve investor protection. The Securities and Exchange Commission Act itself also provides regulation which achieves investor protection, as well as the Companies and Other Business Entities Act. This is previously we used to call this the Companies Act. Now it's been expanded. It's now called the Companies and Other Businesses Act, or COBE Act. And of course, another piece of regulation is the Constitution of Zimbabwe, to the extent that it makes provision for the protection of property rights. You will notice that as you trade in our markets, you're actually trading interests in financial interests, which is money. So that's property. So our constitution does make provision for the protection of rights in financial interest as well. The responsibilities of a stockbroker in the primary markets are fully set out in the Victoria Falls Stock Exchange listing rules in section 20, as read with the 16th schedule. But the most critical responsibility coming out of that is that the stockbroker must ensure that all applications for listing on a securities exchange comply with the listing requirements of that securities exchange. You would notice that issuers, it would be hectic and cumbersome for issuers to fully appraise themselves as to what needs to be done to bring their securities to listing, as well as what they need to do thereafter after listing, which we call the continuing obligations. So a stockbroker is admitted as a member of a securities exchange and is thus deemed to be knowledgeable about its listing requirements, hence the requirement for all listing applications to be submitted through a stockbroker or a sponsor, right? So, and besides providing advisory services for IPOs and rights issues, sponsors also provide guidance to enable issuers to comply with continuing obligations of the Securities Exchange. I'll quickly, just speak to the continuing obligations, just so that people are clear what these continuing obligations are. So it's one thing bringing a company onto a securities exchange, and it's another that the company has to be in compliance with the rules of the exchange thereafter. And there's quite a bit of things that are involved in terms of continuing obligations, which I thought warrant a quick scrutiny. So in terms of continuing obligations, there are general obligations of disclosure of the issuers or those that have listed relating to material price sensitive information. So whenever there's an event that causes or may cause sensitivity in the price, there is an obligation to make disclosure, right? And that disclosure must be simultaneous. In other words, it must be made at the same time so that all investors in the market access that information at the same time to avoid information asymmetries. Communication with security holders. Issuers must provide necessary facilities and information to enable security holders to exercise their rights. So the provision of information, the invitation to EGMs, the provision of proxies where shareholders cannot come in person to vote, etc. The publication of all announcements on exchange data portal. So there's all these exchanges that I spoke about do have a data portal where all the information that an issuer publishes also sits on the portal, so that anyone who wants to see what publications or announcements have been issued by a company can just go onto the data portal of the stock exchange under that company's name and see what is the latest information that has been disclosed. There's also the necessity for the disclosure of periodic financial information, the announcement of dividends and interest if it's debt issuance, publication of interim reports and annual financial statements, preliminary reports, review of interim and preliminary reports by auditors, the notification of modified and qualified audit opinions, notifications relating to changes in capital. All these things form continuing obligations. When they happen, there is need for an issuer to make disclosure. And in making these disclosures, your broker handholds you to make sure that you achieve compliance. There are issues that have to do with the rights as between holders of security, equality of treatment at all material times, because the rights that are given by the shares are equal, they rank pari passu. You need to treat shareholders equally. You also need to make sure that the shareholder spread that is mandated by the exchange is maintained. When you come to listing on day one, if it's equity securities, the ZSE may mandate you to make sure that you have listed at least 30% of your shares should be offloaded to the public. In other words, to investors who are not related to the sponsors or the initial shareholders. And that must be achieved. In other words, the major shareholders cannot proceed to buy those back and end up with 80%, for instance, right? So when there's a breach, there's an obligation for notification, and for that to happen, you also need to do it through your broker, right? Press announcements must be made in English and published in 2 national papers. Circulars and pre-listing statements should be distributed to all security holders, either through post or electronic mail. There must be a transfer office that is maintained either in Harare or Bulawayo, those being the major cities of the country. Proxy forms are mandatory for all meetings. In other words, if a shareholder cannot attend a meeting and vote personally, there must be provision of proxy forms to allow them to vote through the agency of third parties. Documents of title must be issued either physically or electronically. If they're electronic, they will be in dematerialized form. Physical, it's at the option of the holder. And there must be the issuance of receipts for all documents of title that are lodged with a company. Let's say a company has bought another, one company buys another, and it issues its shares as consideration for the purchase of the other company. When a shareholder lodges his share certificates for the old company to be converted into the new company, there is a requirement that receipts must be issued for that, right? Lastly, relating to continuing obligations, there are also things such as when you are redeeming listed securities, you need to comply with the constitutive documents. What are the articles and memorandum of association saying about such redemptions? You obviously need to pay listing fees to the Securities Exchange to remain a bona fide listed entity. You need to notify investors in the market about the change in directors in the company. Whenever employees in the company deal in the securities of the company, that needs to be there needs to be notification. When there is change in auditors, there need to be notification, etc. All these things are things which, once a listing has happened, an issuer is obliged to make sure that they happen. And as you can notice, there's a whole host of these things, and you would need support from your sponsoring broker to make sure that you navigate through these issues and achieve compliance. Right. The next issue relates to what stockbrokers do in the secondary markets. So the secondary markets are the markets where the trading and price discovery, the bidding processes happen once the securities have been issued in the primary markets. So an IPO has happened, the company has raised money, then subsequently its shares start trading on an exchange. The company no longer raises money from those transactions. It's now money changing hands between shareholders. So typically examples of transactions on the secondary markets are the buying and selling of ordinary shares, exchange traded fund units, REIT units, bonds, or whatever other instrument, commodities, or whatever is listed on that market. And these transactions are also highly regulated in order to provide investor protection. So you'll notice that both transactions on the primary markets and secondary markets are typically highly regulated in our jurisdictions. The responsibility of a stockbroker in the secondary markets include the provision of buy and sell recommendations. Brokers typically conduct research so that they're able to support their clients in terms of which securities should be purchased or sold or held at any given time. The facilitation of trading by securing counterparties to a transaction. So in other words, if someone is trying to sell a block of shares, a broker through his network would typically know who would be interested in that and try to bring on board a buyer, and vice versa. If someone is trying to buy, a broker would typically know who would be in a position to be selling those securities. The maintenance of a fair market in the sense that it is unrigged. So a broker has a responsibility to make sure that the bidding process, their bids and offers reflect the true demand and supply dynamics of the traded securities. This is really an important and ethical responsibility that stockbrokers have. A stockbroker is admitted as a member of a securities exchange and is licensed by the Securities and Exchange Commission. This provides two layers of regulatory of regulation. which provides enhanced protection to investors. So in the first instance, if an investor has a complaint against a stockbroker, on the VFX, for instance, they can approach the VFX and lodge the complaint, and the VFX, if needful, can escalate that to the Securities and Exchange Commission. So all that is designed to provide high-level investor protection. And with the advent of digital channels such as C-Trade, ZSE Direct, and VFX Direct, which Kuda has spoken to, investors can minimize interface with stockbrokers by placing their orders directly through these digital channels. Although on the automated trading platform itself, the execution of the trades does happen through the medium of a stockbroker, but this is not visible to the client. The client will not interact with the stockbroker. They will interact with either the C-Trade, ZSE Direct, and VFX Direct, and execution happens through a broker, and the transaction is concluded. So investors do have an option where you need, so I would say for sophisticated investors who know what they want to do, you can make use of these digital channels. For those that need hand holding, it may be worthy, even if you use these platforms, to have direct interface with your broker, so that you benefit from the advice or guidance relating to the appropriate action to take with respect to securities at any given time. Right. And then finally, let me just quickly speak to investor protection and regulation in the stockbroking industry. And as I highlighted earlier, you would notice that both the primary and secondary markets are highly regulated in order to provide the highest protection to the investing public. The Securities Exchange have criteria for the admittance of stockbrokers as members of their exchanges, while the Securities and Exchange Commission is the licensing authority. So stockbrokers are liable to censure by both the Securities Exchange and the regulatory body, Securities and Exchange Commission. For primary market transactions, the Companies and Other Business Entities Act and the listing rules of the ZSE or VFX provide high levels of investor protection mechanisms, such as the need for the approval of related party transactions by disinterested shareholders or minorities. In other words, where a company seeks to, say, purchase an interest in a company that is being sold by its CEO or chairman of the board, those people are precluded from voting in a decision or a resolution for that transaction to happen. So that is a mechanism that is meant to make sure that transactions are vetted, and those that bear influence will not participate in the resolutions. The need for the provision of detailed circulars for transactions to shareholders, where a company proposes to make an acquisition or a merger with another company, they will have to issue a circular to their shareholders providing adequate information so that the shareholders can make an informed decision and vote accordingly at a general meeting. All those things are mandated by the Act, the Companies Act, as well as the listing rules themselves. For secondary market transactions, the SEC and ZSE provide real-time market surveillance to detect and penalize market manipulation. So our regulators do have mechanisms to see what is happening in terms of volumes trading and who is trading them, and pick up any anomalies that may be happening, and necessary corrective action is taken. And then the Securities Exchanges also mandate issuers to immediately publish cautionary announcements whenever price-sensitive events come to their attention, thus also allowing investors to be properly guided. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I'm happy to take questions relating to the role of stockbrokers in our markets.
Thank you very much, Itai, for that detailed presentation. Let me just go to the chat to see if there are any questions whilst people are raising their hands. I think this one was from Charity. Maybe I will give this one to Kuda, if he's still on the call. Like the question from Charity Kuda that says, will VFEX be immune from policy changes which are similar to SI 142 of 2019, which removed foreign currencies as legal tender and reintroduced the ZWL?
Thank you, Tapio. I think on our exchanges, it's important to note that we have two exchanges. One trades in US dollar, one trades in Zim dollars. So and also you must also remember that VFEX is in a special economic zone and will be given offshore center status. So I think in terms of that, we don't see ourselves having two exchanges with the same currency.
Thank you, Kuda. I will allow people to raise their hands if there are any questions directly to Itai in terms of the presentation that he has just given on the role of a stockbroker and the role of a sponsoring broker. Going once, going twice. Okay, thank you so much, Itai. I see there are no further questions from the participants in this webinar. Allow me to, okay, there's one from Tichawona. Okay, the questions are now coming in. Just hold whilst I... Okay, Kuda, maybe you can speak on behalf of the regulator. The question is the regulator very active?
I think we have a very hands-on regulator. They are abreast with not just policy, but even the day-to-day. They have a window or a door into even the trading system. So they're very hands-on and active.
Thank you very much. And then I'll give this one to Itai from Laurencia. They're asking, what are the benefits for companies that list by introduction over those that list through IPOs? And then there's a part 2 to that question, which says, how will a company that lists by introduction raise funds from the public if it wishes to do so in the future?
Okay, so talking about the benefits of a listing by introduction versus IPO, it's less cumbersome. It's a less cumbersome mechanism, provided at the time that you are coming to the exchange, you have satisfied the shareholder spread requirement, that 70-30 shareholder spread. So it's easier typically because you are not raising money. So you are just saying, look, we do not need to raise money. We need to be public. We have made sure that we have expanded our shareholder register to meet your requirements. So can we be admitted onto the board of the exchange? And then so typically the exchange just scrutinizes your shareholder register. They then satisfy themselves that you have achieved the spread, you've got the minimum capital requirements, you conform to the requirements of the Companies and Other Business Entities Act for a public company, in that your memorandum and articles relate to a public company. You've got the minimum number of directors required in terms of the act. When the boxes are ticked, boom, you are listed. In terms of being able to raise money going forward, yes, you can raise money by either, the easiest thing would be maybe to float a rights issue so that current shareholders can participate, or if you identify strategic shareholders, you could make a private placement directly to those shareholders and expand your share register. So indeed, you can raise money in the same manner that even those that had done an IPO before can raise money. Thank you.
Thank you, Itai. There's another question as well. I will direct this one to you as well. Are there strategies for attracting issuers who want to benefit from multiple listing from other exchanges? No, let me give this one to Kuda. Kuda, did you hear the question or should I repeat it?
Please repeat the question.
Are there strategies for attracting issuers who want to benefit from multiple listing from other exchanges?
Oh, yes. Thank you. We were actually at a conference yesterday where Botswana is also looking for the same. So we are looking at, as being part of ASIA as well, we're looking at where we can partner and they can be dual listings of counters in other jurisdictions. I think mainly to be off the VFX because of the currency issues. So it's something that the exchange is looking into, and I think we will be announcing something probably early next year.
Thank you very much, Kuda. I will ask yourself, Kuda, Itai, and also Simbiso to just put your contact details in the chat for those that would want to engage you further. There's one question from Tatinda. I think I'll take this one. Where can we find a list of registered stockbrokers in Zimbabwe? I don't see many advertising in traditional media or social media. So these ones are also found on both the ZSE and the VFX website. You will find a full list of the registered stockbrokers as well as their contact details. You can also even find the names on the website for the Securities and Exchange Commission of Zimbabwe. So you can either go to the ZSE website, the VFX website, or even the SEC website. Kuda, last question for you. You were talking about the market data, and the attendee is asking whether this is for sale and if this is an API. Maybe just clarify that as we round up.
I think we have both. So we do have an API. If you want to integrate with us, there's a process that you follow. And if you want to be registered and you want to buy data on a monthly, quarterly, or an annual basis, we also have a team that looks into that, but we have both options open.
Thank you, Kuda. Thank you, Itai, for your contact details. For those that would want to engage Itai further outside this webinar, you can directly contact him as well as Simbiso or Kuda. But my job is to thank the speakers that took their time to let us know about what VFX is, what's the role of the custodian and the role of the sponsoring broker is, as we are trying to spread the word about the new exchange, which is the Victoria Falls Stock Exchange, and how you can also benefit as a participant, whether you want to raise capital or you want to come through as an investor. So thank you very much to Kuda, to Itai, and to Simbiso, and a special thank you to all the delegates that are on this call for taking your time to actually come through and hear what we had to offer to you guys. We will send through the presentations as well as the compressed recording via email. Other than that, I want to thank you all and I wish you a good day. Thank you very much.